in the parts of the Celtic world where you don't speak Gaelic, and so you don't have stories about Finn McCool, you often have stories very similar to that, that follow the pattern of the Grail myth. The great stories in Brittany, talking about Brittany being the British Celtic country, that is the Brythonic country that is related to Welsh, where you still have that sort of great storytelling tradition, oral storytelling. The great myths are basically the Grail legend in various forms that are told. But again, they all have that common theme of bringing fertility back in some way. It's been lost in the other world, lost in the past, lost in places where you can't normally regain it except through the imagination, through rekindling the power of the ancestors in the sacred space where you're telling stories. So Fíneacht, as I said, is therefore the centerpiece stories, but you could tell other stories that are part of other matters, traditions of storytelling. For instance, you could tell stories, especially in Ulster, but stories about Cuchulainn, right? Stories about Cruchor MacNessa, where they're often not introduced in the same way, because they're not felt to be about the same kind of thing, but they have the same kind of prestige as being associated with ancient times. Then how do you build the story so that you make it make sense to the audience? In Celtic framework, you want there to be certain correspondences in the numbers and the colors, the genders of the characters and so forth, so that they form patterns that work cumulatively in the building of the story. So for instance, in Celtic storytelling, and this is true of other traditions, but I mean in Celtic especially, the number 3 is extremely important. You have these triads in which something has to be gone through 3 times so that it sticks. Sometimes you make it be 9 times so that the 9 is the more powerful 3. But it's even striking when stories are told that are known in literary tradition. Their written forms are very well known in Irish literature, but the live storyteller reconstructs them so that they have this kind of symbolic structure to them. For instance, the story of Deirdre. This is one of the few Ulster cycle stories that are still very popular and are retold by the Shanachis in both Irish and Scottish communities. And usually there are things woven into the story that are not part of the literary versions of the stories, but that work beautifully within the context of the expectations of a Celtic audience. For instance, well, even in the literary version of the story of Deirdre, she has 3 visions. Deirdre, in the literary version, she's the daughter of a retainer of King Cruchor of Ulster. Okay, so story of Deirdre, her parentage is different in different sources. In the literary versions, she's usually the daughter of a retainer of King Cruchor of Ulster, and as the king is making his rounds, staying in various homes of his retainers as he goes through Ulster, he's staying at this man's house, and the man's wife is pregnant, she gives birth that night, and there's a horrible scream that's heard as the young girl is being born, and all of the warriors of the king jump up and grab their weapons and start fighting each other in panic, not knowing who the attacker is. And the druid, Cathfa, or Caffa in modern Irish, prophesies that this girl child is going to cause untold misery to the people of the world, because she'll be so beautiful that all men will want to possess her, and they will kill each other for her. And for that reason she's called Deirdre, which means trouble. And
what is that?
Yeah.
Deirdre.
Deirdre.
After
Deirdre,
that.
right? Deirdre is And so the reaction of the Ulster court is that this child has to be killed immediately, right? So that she doesn't cause all this trouble. But the king thinks she's going to be the most beautiful woman in the world. Well, I have the authority, I'm going to keep her for myself. So he sets it up so that this older woman, Leorcham, who's an aristocratic woman, but who was some sort of warrior, it's not quite sure, some sort of woman warrior, but who now serves as a foster parent for aristocratic children. And so she's fostered to this woman and is made to never ever see a man, or at least a younger man, because this woman is married, she does have a husband, but it's an older man, so it's not considered as threatening. And until eventually fate finds her in the form of the three colors that make her visualize what a beautiful young man would look like, even though she's never seen one. And this is always retained in the folk tellings of the story. In the story of, as told by Éamon na Búrc, who was one of the last great Shanachies in Connacht and Connemara in the 20th century, she's the daughter of Manannán MacLear, but for no particular reason. She just decides, the storyteller decided this was appropriate. And there's no druid, but Manannán himself knows, because he's magical, when this child is born, that she's going to cause untold misery. So he runs away and he's going to drown her. And King Crachur sees that this is happening. He says, why are you going to drown this baby? So he explains, of course, that this woman is going to be the most beautiful woman in the world, and she's going to be so beautiful that men are just going to go crazy over her and kill each other. So, of course, the king reacts as he does in the literary story. He says, well, no, I'm going to control her. I'm going to have her entirely for myself. And Éamon na Búrc goes to quite some detail in how he arranges this so that she absolutely never sees another man. And then she has the vision of the three colors, and that's the same in all versions of the story, because it's such a striking image, when it's Samhain and snow falls, and it's when cattle are being slaughtered before winter, all the cattle that you're not going to actually keep through the winter and feed, you slaughter. And she sees blood from a calf being slaughtered on the white snow, and a black raven comes to pluck at the snow. And she thinks, could be a young man who has a skin as white as the snow, and hair as black as this raven, and cheeks as red as this blood. And in the folk version, this is confirmed. One of the women who serves her says, oh yes, there's a man exactly like that, exactly like you're imagining. And this is Naoise, son of Uisne in the folk version. And the storyteller then does is present this as a triad. He says, going to ask the king to let you go to a particular gathering that is going to take place at the court, and all of the warriors of the king are going to go past. So this will be the first time she actually sees men. And she actually tricks the king into accepting this, basically showing that now she's a grown woman and she knows about these things. The king eventually relents and lets her see these women. She's told that you're going to see one man who is incredibly beautiful. You're going to think it's him. But that's not. That's Naoise's little brother, Ardan. And let him go past. Don't let him seduce you. He's not the one. Then you're going to see a second man go past, and he's going to be even more like your vision. And you're really going to fall for him, but no, this is Alil, or Al as it's called in the Connemara version. This is Al, he's Naoise's second brother. And, don't give in to him because there's better coming. And then the third one that's going to come, that's Naoise. This is the one that you're going to, who's destined for you.
How's leash spelled?
N-O-I-S.
Oh, Noit. Oh.
Leash.
Oh, because my name's Leisha.
Yes. Or leash. Or Naoise in Irish, but in the version, Éamon na Búrc's version, is just called Naoise. And here you have this sort of cumulative building through three sections, which is what the Celtic audience wants. This is what makes it work. So in fact, she's looking at the warriors coming in, and Ardon comes in first, and he's described as this extremely appealing young man who's strong and suggests a running animal, and is so full of this energy that Deirdre is extremely attracted to him. But she remembers, no, this is not him. He's totally desirable, but it's not the one. And then Ad appears, and he's described as even more spectacular. There's like solar imagery surrounding him, and he's full of this energy that is almost irresistible. But no, she resists because she knows there's better to come. And then Leash appears, and it's like sunrise, and she's completely swept off her feet. But she knows that it was right to wait for this, and the audience also knows that it was right to wait for this. They feel this sense of fulfillment once the 3 phases have gone through, and you reach the third one, and that's that.